What's happening, Nye? How you doing? Good evening, everyone. I'm just throwing these lives in when I have the opportunity. I guess the more that I read and just observe social work. Good evening. The more that I read and just observe, the more professionals I speak to, the more service users I speak to, the more I look at the service and look at my role and look at the effort we put in, the more questions I ask. And the more questions I ask, it's like, we need more support for social work, you know what I mean? I'm wearing my hood. This is my dressing gown, people. I'm wearing my hood because my hood helps me. It's comfort, but it also helps me to focus a little bit. It kind of blocks out a little bit of sound, helps me like that. So I'll have it on and off. It's home time now. Yeah. So today, what I want is good interaction, if you would. And in fact, I'm going to let the audience build up before we get into it because I think you all still are coming in. And I'm going to become a rich man because every time I say I have to put 50p in a jar. So I think in the last session I had to put about £5 in, do you know what I mean? But what I want is a really interactive session because I want you to give me your ideas as well. And if you have any questions, let's do it. Let's do it. Is that good? Sort of. Nah, we don't want any shadows like that. Yeah. So we'll take this off and see how this goes. So please, before we start, tell me, what stage are you in your studies or your career? Are you a social worker, are you a student, masters, step up? What's happening for you? Let us know. And then we'll get into it. Just waving at everyone. Quite a few social work specialists on here. Good to see you all. We all need to network and come up together and create more awareness. Dear social worker, thank you. ASYE, lovely. Well done. Well done for making it. That means you've done your... Could I say you've done the hard part? I don't know. Youth worker, you might be the odd one out. Well, sort of. You're a frontline worker. We do the same job in many respects. In adult services, 1.5 years post step up. Yeah, good. Year 3 student, social worker. Great. If you guys have any questions whilst we're doing this, let us know. But this is really important, right? I've only done some work in adults, but I'm, 99%, children's services. But this can still help. This should, you start your ASY in March, good, so you're qualified. Lovely, here we go. So this is it now. So what we're looking at today is how to manage resistant families. Good topic. Why? I was asked to do something about this by someone in the direct message that I received. Can you do something on it? I don't know if they're listening, but I decided to do this today, and it is something that you will guaranteed to come across, okay? You all know this, and some of you are anxious for it, but some of you have got some lived experiences. Thank you, good topic. Some of you have lived experiences, or life experience, should I say, whereby you've been working as a youth worker or alongside social workers or family practitioner, or just simple life experience in doing whatever you've done. So you might find this a light topic. But for those of us who have come into this fresh, or our characters don't really suit those kinds of challenges, this is a key topic, because without that groundwork of building relationships, you will not be a good social worker, all right? Saying that, the other side of social work is the administration. If you can't write well or maintain a level of consistency, you will struggle in your social work. Okay, second year social work student, well done. Made it that far. Keep going. Yeah, well done to all of the students out there, ASYE. You are here. So this topic is for you because now you're going to be holding cases. And even though you're students in your first year, they're going to give you a certain level of work, in the second year of social work. That's when your placement begins. You've probably started your placement already. And they're going to give you cases. And they're not really going to say, let's give her a nice one. They won't give you the intensely complex ones. But they will give you a case and you don't know what you're going to get. You could get to that front door or make that phone call and they don't want to know. So the situation is this next week. So this is good, yeah. So this is important for you, okay? Dear social worker, that we learn how to just make some headway in meeting families. What you can't always go by, you cannot always go by reading case notes beforehand. Paper can be a little bit misleading, but what it does is it informs you about history, but it won't necessarily always tell you that a family won't want to work with you, okay? Because your demographic, your look, your heritage, your language, your approach, it could be a number of things that can throw them right off you if they're that kind of family. So we're going to get into it and I'm going to throw some tips your way. In fact, there's about 3 or 4 tips that we're going to go into. Some of them are quite detailed, but take notes. Not only am I going to give you some kind of more clinical tips, but I'll tell you if I can think of some personal experiences and how I've dealt with it. Okay, the reality of it. So my thing is this. You will get a parent sometimes who's had a bad experience with social work previously, so social workers previously. So what they will do is they will use that past experience and not want to work with you at all or resist you. Now, let's be real, for parents or families who have had a bad experience or have been in the system a long time, it's fair to say that you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. All right. So there are some families who will resist until the police get involved, all right? Or they will do that. There are some that will do that. And more directed at parents, okay? They've had enough. And my advice, tip number 1, is to apologize. I want to be clear, and I've said it regularly. Perception is more powerful than truth because perception is reality for people. Their reality. So if they think that you're a problem, then you're a problem. You may not be, but that's beside the point. It's what they think. So their perception of you, which is a prejudgment, that's prejudice, is it. And that's it. All right? That's learnt behavior. That's a culture. And then that's trauma. All informing their actions, yeah? So that's something to consider, that not everybody's going to want to know. But for those who you can get a gap, if you can get a wedge, something we call back in the day entering wedge, which is a piece of wood that's cut like a triangle and you smash it in to create a split. If you can get a wedge in, then there's a tool that we often use, and we've been had some training on this where I work, and that is motivational interviewing, right? So motivational interviewing may require you at first with the wedge and a hammer, smack it in, which is to apologize for what's happened in the past. And I've seen it time and time again where some parents, if I had used a different approach, it wouldn't have worked. And it starts with an apology to say, look, I'm sorry about how you were treated before, or maybe alter your language and say, I'm sorry about your experience before, but I don't want that to happen again. That's so important because remember, you're there for, if it's working, you're there for their interests. You're working with children and families, you're here for the children. So you might have to take a bullet, you know. Yeah, thank you, Shankies. Yeah, you're a regular. Appreciate your presence. You know, that wedge is key because you're there for the family, and if you're there for the family, then what you need to do is take a few bullets, meaning take the blame for things that were or may not have been done properly or were done properly and didn't agree with. Try and move on from that and create a new story. So you're saying, I'm sorry, meaning you acknowledge, you hold your hands up. And when you're in that position, they may have mercy on you, or they've heard something different from a professional. Do you know what I mean? So that's just the entering wedge. That's the entering section. So when we go into motivational interviewing is where you use a space in time. So you enter someone's home, or it could be on the phone. They could be in an office. It could be in a street. It could be in a school. And it's about them, right? It's like a strengths-based approach to, here's your theory for your assignments, yeah? It's a strengths-based approach to, by the way, if you have questions, ask, okay? A strengths-based approach to motivate the parent to work with you. So you walk through the door and they're a bit cold with you, and then you eventually, if you can, they've got a cold shoulder towards you, and what you're going to do is you're just going to use the strengths and say, this is a nice home. Or look, I just want you to know. And mean it as well. Like, seriously, you've got to switch on a level of genuineness, right? And say, look, I really appreciate that you're working with us. You've told me what you've gone through. I can see you've been through a lot. You know, I'm here for you. So you're driving that wedge deeper, but you're doing it with using sympathy. Don't use it in an unauthentic way. Use it in a genuine way, which means that, you know, before you even enter social work, whatever you see written on a referral, you've got to still care about the people you're working with, because it's about the outcomes. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to mean it. Don't say it as a matter of course. Okay? And then what you're doing is you're using their strengths, like, or you're using an approach to ask them questions about their journey. They're angry. Tip number 2, let them let out that steam. They might talk to you. I've worked with a family where I was in a home visit for 2 hours. I don't do home visits that long, but it was necessary and they didn't mind. But I needed to overcome a hurdle. Otherwise, it was about escalating it higher. And so once we got through that hurdle, I could de-escalate the matter. But that's sometimes a sacrifice you make as a social worker, where you have to let them let their steam out. And that means that they may insult you or throw things, not necessarily literally, but, they might say things that are triggering for you. And you say, look, I get it. And that's what I do. I get it. And you know what? Let's create a new narrative. Tell me more about yourself. Tell me about your history. You may go there. You may not. Depends. Tell me what it's like being a parent. You're asking them questions. Open questions. Tell me, where's dad? Where's mum? I've had parents who didn't want to look at me, and then they ended up calling me like 6:30 at night, telling me their whole life story. So, people are dying out there. They're neglectful, they're abusive, but that's because they're dying. That's because they're struggling with who they are and what they are and what they've accomplished, and they haven't made sense of it. So they're just reacting to every feeling they have, and their children or themselves or, are the victims of that. And that's our job to stop it. Okay? So we ask open questions to get them to open up. When humans open up, then they develop a level of, they're shown a level of vulnerability, and naturally they will be then more open to you and trusting. So once you can get them to talk about their journey, that happens in therapy, right? Once they do that, then there's trust, and they've seen you listen. And then at the end, sometimes they might say, I'm sorry, I was yapping on, and say, no, it's fine. Now, you have to understand, some people might consider that a Jedi mind trick, but actually show that you care and care. And I'm going to reiterate that point so much so. You're going to ask reflective questions like, well, how did that make you feel? Now, you're there for them, and that's what it is. It's like you've got to open the door, because getting inside is the root to the problem. All right. Now, you may not cure the problem, but that's the journey. That's the only route that you can take. Now, that is of meaning. Now, if you want to take a clinical journey, then what's going to happen is you're going to, if you want to take a clinical journey, you're only going to upset the family, and it's the opposite to what you want. So you've driven in a wedge, you've heard them out, you've let them let off their steam. They're going to say things that might trigger you. Then shout at you, show them that you care, you're in, and then ask them questions. How's that made you feel? And what does that mean? Now you're their therapist, and that's what it is. And you affirm them, look, that must be hard. I'm sorry about that. I want to help you. I don't know if I can, but I'll try my best. That's my job. Let me help you, you know. But I think you've done well for where you've come from. Motivational interviewing is a very important tool to get a job done. And I say get a job done, it sounds very kind of a world apart. Actually, your job is to safeguard the family, but you can't do it without their cooperation. So this is one of the best ways to do the job, is to show people that you care. Okay? There's parts of the job that are box ticking. Personalization, let us know what that means, okay? And let us know what that means. I'll come to your questions in a moment, but let us know what that means when you say you covered personalization, because this is so important to be able to meet a family where they are. All right? Now, sorry, I've said it a number of times. I'm from West Indian heritage. West Indians don't like social services. That's a cultural thing from way back. But that's to do with levels of discrimination and racism people have experienced, and predominantly social workers were white back in the day. And so we don't trust white people telling black people how to live and to function. So that wall is up. It's also common in many cultures, okay? More than others. So you have to understand that our job is to break down that barrier. And what can break down a lot of barriers is showing that you care. Hair in my mouth. Yeah? When you're affirming people, you're empowering them. They're probably going to hear something from you that they've never heard before. There are some parents you're going to work with who have never been complimented in their whole life, who have never felt any value. So how do you think they're going to parent? Okay? How do you think they're going to parent at all? How do you think they're going to love? They can't. They've never received love. Some parents have never received love, not from their children, and not from their partner, not from their parents. So this is powerful, okay? Motivational interviewing, replay this live, okay, and share this live is one of your tools. But motivational interviewing can be done very clinically, or it can be done in a very humanistic way. Let me get to your questions now, okay? Thank you, Shankies, yeah. Taking notes, thank you. What advice would you give for a young student worker working with adults that may look down on them due to their age? Stand strong. You have to. I think I want to do a session on assertiveness from within, right? Not the appearance of it, but I think that too many people are in their 20s. Too many students in their 20s feel like they're underneath something, like someone's age or experience. No, I think that a whole show needs to be dedicated to those in their early 20s, leaving uni, have little life experience. How do you deal with someone looking down on you and thinking, how the heck are you going to help me? We've got to deal with that. And it's a side topic, actually. How can we deal with people looking down on us for our age? I think you have to be there and turn up for them. I think you know what it is? I think that you have to. Your heart has to be in it. When you talk, people can tell if you mean it. Yeah? So you have to, when you show people that you are there for them, let me help you. Now, remember, if the wedge has gone in, okay? If the wedge is in, if the wedge won't go in, you can't do much. But if the wedge can be just wedged in a little bit, you know, like so, humans will respond to that. Listen, and I'm only 20, but I can help. I haven't got any kids. I can still help you. You've got to know yourself. And when you know yourself and are confident in yourself, you show that humility to the family and they will respect you. Okay? That's my short version of advice, but I think it needs a whole new discussion. Okay? Is labeling an issue that you face? I feel that it is so difficult not to have a predetermined view, even though we are taught not to. Now, when you're talking about labeling, I want you to expand on your question. Okay, when you're talking about labeling, are you talking about prejudice? So I've read paperwork and I'm judging the family in advance. Absolutely, you're going to do that. Absolutely. Now, when I used to work in the youth offending service, depending on the type of case I had, I wouldn't read the case beforehand. Now, remember, these young people have been convicted, right? Or sometimes they've been convicted. Some of them are being, they want a pre-sentence report. But I would deliberately, when I was working with some of them, I would deliberately not read the paperwork because I want to see them as they were without the judgment. But in social work, you got to be careful about doing that. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that every family, I don't meet many resistant families. Maybe one in 15, 20 cases is resistant. And then out of them, because I work in an assessment team, so I'm going to turn over cases. Out of them, I might get one of them that might turn around, yeah, out of every 40, yeah. So when I read the paperwork, it can build, and this is the thing you've got to be careful of. You've got to know yourself and be quite fearless. Like, you'll read paperwork about maybe hostility or resistance, case notes, previous assessments. Does that mean it's going to happen to you? And so what it is that if you build that into your approach, then naturally, because once you've read that, it's in. And if you carry that to the front door, they will see it. Because they're probably being defensive because they feel heavily judged themselves. You know, one of the reasons why my culture, we didn't like social workers or any, I used to term white people, white professionals, because we felt that they were going to judge us against their own standards. And so they would look in and look at our house. And believe me, 95% of West Indian homes are extremely tidy. It's a part of the culture. But they might see things that they might judge as not as judge and look down on. We think that you have prejudice, so we think you're going to look down on us. So therefore, whatever you got to say, I don't want to know. And that's what's happening with many communities. Okay? So you've got to be careful about your own judgments and approach them with a care that they can see that they're not judged. How would you've got to visualize and say, how would you approach a family in a way? What does it look like in your mind, how you approach someone to let them know that they're not judged? And you've got 10 seconds. That's a trick. We could go into it even more. Let me just wave. Am I going too fast, guys? Let me know. Yes, for example, based on an age, a social class, etc. So what was your original question again? Let's have a look. Labeling. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm answering your question clearly, but whatever you, because then we're prejudiced. When we read their paperwork, we're prejudiced. We're prejudging. You can't help it, but you can learn to manage it, you know, and that comes with time and experience. Because sometimes you read paperwork with someone and it will say resistance, resistance. When you get there, they love you. You know, so we've got to be careful. I think it's important to be, this is Shanky's, I think it's important to be conscious and aware, to not let those thoughts influence our practice with those individuals. Yeah. Now, you have your thoughts, but you've got to be so aware of what you're doing. Okay. Conscious and unconscious bias. Yeah. Did I have a question here? Someone asked a question? Oh yeah, here it is. Any tips on dealing with a practice educator who may be discriminating you as a student? All evidence shown for this. I hope you all got that question. Let me read it again. Any tips on dealing with a practice educator who may be discriminating you as a student? Now, it says all evidence shown for this. So that you have evidence that your educator is doing such. Now, you can complain to your tutor about it. And if you have the evidence, you could do that. Or, and this is the thing, and I was told this in my uni days, was you got to be tough. You can hear my daughter out there. You've got to be tough and think what battles you're going to try to fight, because in social work, it's going to get tougher than that. All right? Now, you have to understand, you do your assessments, you do your assignments, and you do your evidencing. The educator can't fail you if you've done what you've got to do, okay? Your supervisor can't sack you because you've done what you have to do and you've been appropriate. But you will get this at various stages. You will get resistance and maltreatment at various stages, okay? So you have to understand, you can work with a difficult PE, but I can't tell you where that line is when it's too much. But I would advise you to think and say, look, how do I manage this? And, just do to the best of your ability, evidence everything that you're being asked to do, and get to your midway point. Be one step ahead of the game. You're building a portfolio and you're going to be asked to evidence your learning. That's it. And then you're also working or on placement and you're doing your assignments. You got to choose your battles, okay? You just got to get through this. I had great educators and I had great managers, but I've also worked in very concerning environments. And you pick your battles. Because if you're in a job and you don't like your manager, what are you going to do? You're going to complain to someone because you've still got to work in that job. If you're up for the conflict, then you go down that road. But you can't work like that entirely as a social worker. So I'm just throwing that your way. I can't tell you what to do more than that because I don't know your situation. But if you have evidence and you think it's really bad and it's really causing you the level of stress that you can't cope with, you've got to tell your tutor. Right there. Yeah. And have an open discussion with your educator. And if they won't have an open discussion with you about what you're experiencing, talk to your tutor, but then you've got the evidence, okay? All right. Do you have any advice on critical reflections are parts of portfolio for placement, please? I overthink sometimes questions, so let me see if I can answer that, and then I'm going to get into a couple of more tips. Critical reflection. You're just asking questions. I'll give you an example. I just did a podcast on the Tyree Nichols case. Now, look it up. It's a recent case where the 5 black officers, and it's actually 5 black and 1 white officer, chased down this guy. There's a whole backstory to it, but on the face of it, chased down this guy, beat him. I think he died, right? They put the 5 officers' faces on TV, okay? And I was looking at this and I thought, let me give it some time and reflect on it. Let me think about it, ask questions. So this is reflection and it's critical because I'm asking a question on a question. Was it racism? Yeah? That's the big thing that came out. People are asking, well, where was Black Lives Matter? Do you know what I mean? So my question is, was it racism? And I don't think that it was racism. In fact, when you're dealing with discrimination and racism, you've got to ask questions and say, am I racist? Do I discriminate? How do I react when I hear these stories? How is it affecting my practice? Am I more conscious? Am I overly conscious? Forget racism. How am I as a communicator? Let me step outside of myself. How do I look when I'm standing in front of parents? Am I asking the right questions? Am I presenting as non-judgmental? Let's look at the judgmental side of it, in tune with the topic. Am I motivating these parents? Could I have done this better? Could I be doing it? And even in the moment when you're talking to families, something I do, I reflect, hold on, could I say anything differently? What could I do better? And that is, you use that and you answer the question. Try your best to answer the question about the question you're asking. I think I've grown in my professional writing because that was an area of development for me. But why was I struggling in the first place? So, for example, growing up, this is how critical reflection plays out in my head. Growing up, I had no self-confidence. So how is that impacting on my current practice? Or you could say, I'm 20 years old, it's my first year, I don't know anything. So you have a program in your mind saying, I don't know anything. So you got to say, well, why do I feel like I don't know anything? And answer that question. Because I've just started. Now, if you've just started your journey in social work, you'll ask yourself the question, why is my heart rate up now I'm in a strategy meeting? Do you know what I mean? Why is my heart rate up? Why am I so anxious now I've got to write my first assessment? Why am I anxious about making this visit? I've read the paperwork and it says this and about the family. It's raised my anxiety. What's going on here? And then you'd say to yourself like, okay, so why are you doing that? Go and have a conversation with yourself and say, why are you doing that? Sorry. And then get yourself together and say, well, maybe they're actually not going to be what I expect them to be. But if they are, this is how I will react. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to find answers and solutions as well in your critical reflection sometimes to help you practice better, even in the moment. Hopefully I've helped with that. Let me see if there's any more. Did someone ask me a question about the assessment process? Let me just see. What does the assessment process look like? Okay. Let me come back to that. And Charlie, don't let me go. Unless anybody wants to come on and join me on a live tonight. I know you probably haven't got all your hair done and all that. No one cares. If anyone wants to join me and ask a question, that's fine. You're new to reflecting. Oh, cool. Ask questions and be honest. At least with yourself. Never lie to yourself. Okay? And ask questions about other people as well. Now, where was we? So, I want to go back to a point that is so important. I've said it about 5 times. About when you're meeting with challenging families. Resistant families is the word, sorry. You want to show them that you care. And that makes a world of difference. Now, so much so that I've reflected very much on, like the night before and on my way to, I'm thinking, how can I approach this family and tell them I'm escalating to child protection without them wanting to take my head off, right? You have to understand that you can have a good relationship with a family and then you've got to drop the bad news. Look, we're going to escalate this. I think it's a bit more concerning. Or you could say, we're going to have to escalate this to child protection because I have concerns. Because I have concerns, okay? They're 2 completely different ways of saying it. So I take my time with this. I say, look, we want to make sure these kids are safe. I think you need a little bit of support. So what I'm going to do, oh yeah, Nicole, yeah. So come on, we'll get to that in a sec. You sit down with them, you say, look, I think that, you say, I want you to understand, I want you to get the most out of this situation, okay? And I think that there are services that you can get hold of that will help you because it's not working. Whatever conversation is relevant, but you've got to sell it. That is of benefit to the family. And then you say, look, I'm going to escalate to CP because I think that you're going to get the best support that way. Because that's what child protection status is about. It's about support. Do you know what I mean? So you do it in a way that is meaningful to the family. Yeah. So that's the point I wanted to go back to. Number 2 on that now, on my second round of things I want to look at is persistence. You've got to kind of persist with families. It doesn't always work. It's not nice. Some people can't handle rejection. Professionals struggle with rejection, but persist, knock on the door, send text messages and say, oh, let me help you with this, or, send something endearing. I remember I was working for Family and one of the parents was just really hard. How can I describe it to you? Just hard. They come from a hard life. And it was a long day for me because it was about a lot of driving, a lot of meetings, and a lot of dealing with the prejudice from the school. Schools give that sometimes. They do care sometimes, but sometimes they are very judgmental, okay? Because they don't have our skills. They're not trained in the way that we are as social workers to be conscious about it all, right? And so it was a really long day of dealing with that, listening to the school and reflecting and critically reflecting. What are they saying? Because I've met the family and it's not quite like that. But anyway, the concerns were quite high. And I met one of the parents and they were just hard, like. And as they're talking to me, they just burst into tears. And then I said, okay. And I was a bit cold because I was like, if I become too endearing at this point, you're going to use that. Now, it's a long story as to why I did that, but I was deliberately kind of clinical, sorry, because I needed to get certain information from the person, okay? Once I got that information, they burst into tears on me, and twice. And I was like, wow, I bet they don't do this at home. Do you know what I mean? And then I sent a message. Must have been late to say, it was like something I thought up. It was just to encourage them to be soft. And then they messaged me back saying, oh my gosh, you made my heart feel warm. Do you know what I mean? And that's not how they talk. So you kind of, you go there a bit of an extra mile, keep knocking. It doesn't always work, but it's worth the try. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it opens avenues for conversation and you can find out so much. I always do this on my initial visits, yeah. Something meaningful to the family, that's right. So let's go back. What does the assessment process look like? Who asked this question? Charlie. So the assessment process, if you're working with children and families, the assessment process is gathering information. My advice to you is to take with you or print out or whatever you do. I like to type on my phone, right? Very rarely I bring my laptop. I say to the family, look, I'm just going to type on my phone and my notes whilst you're talking to me. Really, what happened? On my phone, that's how I do it, right? And then I email the notes to myself. If I remember to do it. So I always take notes on every visit. Now, your information gathering. How are you doing that? The assessment process is about partly building relationships and the second is information gathering. You're assessing, you're analysing, you're observing, you're doing all of that. So you walk into the home, for example, and you look around and you smell, you look. The house is tidy, but the decor is awful. The decor is great. The house is a real mess. Is mess a problem? You know, you got to analyze it. Well, this is a mess. What does the mess look like? Does it look like a moment or does it look like generally unkept? You know, am I putting my own standards on this? You've got to analyze yourself as you are assessing the family. Because I had a situation recently where one set of professionals went in and said, this house is a complete mess. And I went there and it wasn't. But it was poorly kept. Yeah. The question is it a safeguarding issue? Because people are allowed to have and are entitled to have poorly kept houses. The question is, again, is it going to impact the health of the child? And that's still subjective. So we have to be careful how we assess. But I lower the bar because my house is like perfectly, you know, it's always tidy. Do I carry that standard into the homes? And so you've got to listen to yourself as well as you assess. You've got to listen to the voice. Listen to what the parents say. Now you can get into the parent and listen to their language carefully. and pick up, and it all depends on the referral type. So the referral could be neglect, like the child's come to school with dirty clothes, for example, or smelling. It could be something like that, or always sleeping in school. So that determines what you look for. But then you've got to work out what to look for as you enter the home, and you're listening to the parent, and you're listening to whether the parent cares or not, or you're listening to whether they're telling you what they think you want to hear. So it is a lot of that cues kind of thing, and sometimes it's all about just having a conversation. It just depends on the referral type, which determines what you want to do and look at. The assessment process also involves you contacting other agencies like the GP or the school and asking them for a report. And some local authorities, I worked in one that didn't, they just asked me for just make contact and get information, and some of them have a template, you send it out. And then you collect that information, and then at the end of the assessment, you will analyse the information you've gathered. Make sure you catch the voices of everyone involved in the assessment. So if they're named in the assessment, like parents and the children, get their voice. Sometimes it can be difficult. Some don't want to talk, some do. And it's gathering. And what you will learn to do over time is get a lot of that out the way in the first visit. Okay? In the first visit, you're going to go through all the criteria that you feel is necessary and get it done as quick as you can. Or say, I'm going to get this much done, I'll come back another day and get that done. Now, it depends on what team you work in. So I work in an assessment team, so I've got to get the assessment done in a certain space of time. And I'm learning more still how to be efficient, because I'm all about making things efficient, because time is short in social work. Yeah. That's how it works. I'm considering child protection once qualifying, but I'm not sure if I believe the system really helps. What's your thoughts? Oh man, it's a big topic. I don't know how to answer that. That's a big topic. You know what I mean? The system has gaps. The system has gaps. Sometimes, for some families, massive gaps. You're doing a job, as well as you're doing a job that's supposed to be about caring. That's all I can say about that, really. It's a topic, I mean, yeah. Nye, yeah, you're saying, has disguised compliance ever been an issue for you? How do you go about working with families? It's tough. Disguised compliance, no. Before I answer that question, my last one is this. Resistant parents, depending on the level of risk, you see I'm getting carried away with your questions now, but let me do this last one. So, children and families now, yeah? If families are too resistant and the concern is significant, and that's a discussion you have with your manager and yourself, and you can both very quickly work out, naturally, we need to have a strategy meeting. And the strategy meeting is the first point in the process where you would say, look, we're asked to go in and do an assessment, but the family's resisting. Now, Section 47 does allow you to say to the family, I am supposed to now see this child, whether you like it or not. Parents can still resist you, but they don't have the right to do that. Now, even though they don't have the right to do it, they can still do it, right? And then we have to determine how we proceed with that. So I still can't barge into anyone's house, and I still cannot drag a child out. You know, that's not my jurisdiction. But eventually we can get the police involved, and that creates massive barriers. So the strategy meeting everyone could say, look, we agree that this needs to be a Section 47 investigation now. And we have to do it's about 60% of or 50% of a normal assessment. And that gives me the right now to go into the family and say, look, I need to see this young person. I hope I've explained it clearly. I'm saying a lot because my brain's doing a million things at once. And then that way you're in, right? I need to see your child. I'm sorry. I don't want to get the police involved. Let's talk. Let's work this out. Do you know what I mean? And from there, sometimes you could say, look, they're still resistant. The concerns are significant. We're going to go to child protection conference, and you let the parents know. And that's where that goes. So that's how sometimes the legal framework can support you. It's important to note, to make a note of that. That's law. That's where the legal framework supports you having to kind of pull a resistant family forward. And that's where I end it. So let me deal with your questions. Has disguised compliance ever been an issue for you? How do you go about working with families? Yeah, you know, everyone's got a different level of awareness. I think one of my strong suits is actually listening to lies. Now, sometimes I know a family's lying to me, but I've got to understand if the lies are relevant to the risk at hand. And if the lies are, and that's a tough one, okay, because it's case specific. So disguise compliance, there's sometimes is like, I've worked with a family, a really lovely family that I think are constantly lying to me. But what I'm looking at is, are they doing what needs to be done on the plan? And the answer is yes. So I don't believe a word they say, but their evidence shows that they're doing what they have to do because they're evidencing it. So you've got to work out what to do with disguise compliance. Is the issue assault or, let's say it's a physical assault, then you're going to, like, let's say we suspect a child's been hurt my nose is always itching me. If it's assault, for example, let's say you've got indication that the child's been physically assaulted, and it's not a Section 47 or strategy meeting, then you would go in and try to work with the family to say, look, what's going on here? And listen carefully to their voice and listen to what they're saying. Because everything that they're saying, oh man, I could go into this topic. I tell you, this is a separate one. Peter Hyatt. Let me put it in the comments. Look him up. Look him up on YouTube, okay? He teaches you how to analyze language. He's really good. He works with the police in America. And he can tell by people's confessions whether they're telling the truth or not. And even more information. So I love this guy. Now, what it is that you listen to what people say, and they're going to indicate to you in many ways that you've got to pick up if they are trying to divert, distract, or whatnot, okay? So I've worked with parents who I've asked them a straight question because I'm a very direct person. Like, I'm really listening to you. If I ask you a question, so why did you smack that child in the face? And they may not answer the question even though they're talking for 15 minutes. Do you understand? I mean, I've been in a number of professionals meetings where the parents have hoodwinked the professionals. And I'm standing there, because it's a voting system, it's like I can put my vote in, and if everyone is hoodwinked, what can you do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. So that can happen, where parents lied about what they're doing, and I know they're lying, but the chair, the child protection chair, just agrees with them. It's like, what do you do? But that is a level of deceit, as is disguise compliance, and disguise compliance kind of looks like different things sometimes. So yeah, I'm dealing with it, and you've just got to be very aware of not allowing them to maybe relate to, oh, are you from Jamaica? My mum's Jamaican. What part of Jamaica? That kind of talk you've got to watch out for, you know. Are you born in Nottingham? Oh yeah, my uncle's from Nottingham. Really? Oh yeah. So tell me, get back to it. Why did you smack that child in the face? You know what I mean? Get back, and you need clear answers. And once you have the clear answers, then you can work with that evidence. If they're trying to always do this, and I've had a lot of that, then you'll write that in the assessment. Parent is not direct in answering direct questions, okay? I need to know why you did it. Tell me why it happened. Where? Okay. But the child said this, so tell me more. Sometimes you have to be real clinical with someone, because if you don't get to the bottom of it, we're going to escalate the matter. We have to, because if a parent's lying about an assault or a serious level of neglect, emotional abuse, we've got to do something about that, or that child will regret their life. It's in our hands. Let's go into The Child's Legal Journey Through Care is a good book. Okay. They have some good flow charts included. I found it useful when I did my placement in Safeguarding Team. Lovely. Byford to Home. Lovely. I have trouble reading these now. Yeah, okay. Hi, big bruv. Newly qualified here for wisdom and strength. Thank you. We've got to share, because I'm not up there. I'm doing this live, but I'm letting you know, as I'm talking to you, I'm talking to myself. I've seen a pregnant mum described as unkept by a social worker. Unkept was her in a tracksuit and her hair was in a messy bun. This turned into a mum will neglect baby, leading to proceedings. Now, look, That alone won't lead to proceedings at all. That won't do it. And, you know, the line manager is going to ask, if a line manager is worth 10 pence, literally 10 pence, they will ask, what do you mean by that? How does a messy bun, even if she had stains on her tracksuit every day, how did the children present? So these are simple questions. Like, there's no way you can go to proceed, because the legal team is going to say, what are you talking about? How is that neglect? And what was the appearance of the child? What was the neglect of the child? There's no way that that statement by itself is going to lead to proceedings. Guys, you need a lot of evidence. You've got to back it up. You've got to back it up for it to go to proceedings, legal proceedings, where you want to possibly take the child or something like that. No. Look, that alone won't do it. And the social workers need to be held to account. I have to be. If I make statements like the home was unkept, my manager's going to say, what does that look like? Describe it. And I have to tell the truth or lie. That's it. So, you know, we won't get away with that in social work. That statement might have been there amongst other evidence, and then it went to proceedings, and there has to be an evidence of neglect. So some parents can be very messy. You go on any school run in the city and you'll see a parent that is really unkept at times. Are their children kept is the question. Because I know parents that look after their children and not look after themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I challenge that really. I think we have to define resistance also. Sometimes families are scared and behave in ways that are unhelpful. And I mentioned that in the beginning. Just Jordan, thank you. Yeah, we spoke about that in the beginning. What is that resistance about? And there's culture, there's past issues, there's failures of the family from services before. Absolutely. I'm going to be about 5-6 minutes now. Just waving to you all that just joined. Yeah, this is deep, and I hope this was helpful. Case was mishandled from management. Look, you can't mishandle a case and take it to proceedings. Let me tell you something. You have to understand, right? We have to hire barristers, okay, who have no interest in being our friends. They are not our friends. They are barristers who work for the local authority, who advise, and they are going to determine whether we have a case to take to court before it goes to court, or the judge will smash you to pieces. Do you understand? They will smash the area director. They will smash her manager. So her manager, then the area director, then the service manager, and then the line manager, and then me. Okay? If all 4 levels plus the legal team can't see it, okay, and I believe me, if you work in a court like I have, and I've done a lot of court work, right? Okay, there are no friends in court. They want evidence, okay? The CPS, let me give you an example. The CPS, I've seen it. They will try a case if they think they can win. And even if they have evidence for a case and they think that they won't win, they won't take to court unless it's a strategic move. The CPS are not necessarily, you'd like to think they are, but they're not always necessarily interested in the truth. They're interested in, can it stand in court? And that's why we get frustrated with a lot of cases of, say, rape and abuse. Nothing's done. The CPS, if they haven't got the evidence, they won't even try, because it's a waste of money and time. Do you know what I mean? So when it comes to neglect, you can't just say mismanaged, because there will be a level of accountability the whole way up. The only way that it can go up there is through conspiracy. And that's the reality. Like, everybody has to be colluding. Barristers are trained to look at information and analyze it, and they will ask questions, because what they're going to not know is that they are fighting another barrister in court against their own case. Well, if we can't answer this question, we can't go. They're going to take it to the panel. It's a long-ass meeting that they have to go to say, this is why we need the child removed. Okay? That's not mismanagement. The barrister's going to say, well, what did you... And the judge is also going to say, well, what can you put in place for this family? Because she had messy hair. Who removes a child from messy hair? No one does that. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, I went into that a bit, but, you know, you all are making friends on here. Really good. Child unborn, 12 vibes. Case was mishandled, child unborn. There's other issues going on, you understand? And I don't know it, obviously. I did an amazing... You're bigging up yourself, Salty. I did an amazing webinar this week from Community Care Inform called Language and Lived Experience. I'd highly recommend it to anyone in the sector. How do we share that? So who do we go to? We're going to go to Salty, Hair, and Sandy Toes. Lovely. Salty. Guys, go to her page and follow her, and she will send you the link, I'm sure. Is that okay? Now I'm about to wrap up now. Hopefully that helped. If you didn't understand the word I was saying, let me know. But watch it back, especially the first 20 minutes. And that kind of breaks down how you, in a clinical, one of the methods that we use is motivational interviewing to understand how to approach resistant families. Yes. Thank you for joining. I'm done. Have a good night.